Today, filming yourself crying and broadcasting that emotional vulnerability to the internet for validation is a common response to daily stress. Yet there is an entire demographic that reacts to modern panic with a detached shrug. They operate on the assumption that hardship is simply the ordinary state of things. This is Generation X. Born between 1961 and 1981, they are the disaffected middle children of history, wedged between the massive cultural footprints of the Boomers and the Millennials. How exactly did this specific cohort develop such a bulletproof psychological exterior? Their resilience stems from a childhood ecosystem shaped by unparalleled freedom and absolute neglect. Growing up in the 70s and 80s meant navigating a world that didn't hide its teeth. The childhood environment lacked the protective buffers common today. The threat of nuclear annihilation remained a constant, normalized background noise. You learned to live within a daily forecast of total destruction. This milk carton displays specific data fields: the age, the height, the date last seen. These faces ensured that the fear of kidnapping invaded the domestic kitchen every morning. Add to that the bizarre, media-amplified panics, from warnings about satanic cults to the persistent fear of quicksand and deadly piranhas. Developing a human brain under this constant baseline of existential risk forces a child to categorize severe danger as ordinary. This era pioneered the Latchkey kid. Boomer parents adopted a hands-off approach, sending children outside with specific instructions to return only when the streetlights came on. Coming home to an empty house meant solving daily problems through pure trial and error. Without the internet to provide answers or adults to mediate disputes, self-correction was the only option. For many, this independence was sharpened by economic strain. When the light bill went unpaid, you did your homework by candlelight. The quiet, persistent fear of poverty acted as a primary engine for self-sufficiency. Individual struggles mirrored broader macroeconomic anxieties. You learned very early that resources were finite and that external systems could fail at any moment. Independence became the only viable survival strategy in an environment where failure carried immediate physical consequences. The physical environment offered zero padding, an ecosystem of secondhand smoke, drinking from garden hoses, and riding bikes over homemade ramps without a helmet in sight. The gravel schoolyard was largely unpoliced. Bullies operated out in the open, forcing children to handle physical conflict face-to-face without adult intervention. Parents often viewed martial arts as a way to outsource discipline, but these classes gave children practical tools to inflict damage and end fights quickly. In the absence of parental guidance, 80s pop culture provided a syllabus for self-reliance. Fictional characters who sewed up their own wounds and pushed through physical pain became the primary role models for endurance. The local arcade served as a dimly lit proving ground. It was a place to test reflexes and navigate complex social hierarchies entirely alone. Physical injury and emotional distress were met with the standard instruction to walk it off. This repetition cemented a stoic baseline that removed crying as a functional option. These inputs hardwired a foundational psychological rule that relying on other people is a recipe for heartbreak. Decades of navigating neighborhoods without a map or a supervisor translates directly to the modern workplace. When you are trained to solve puzzles in isolation, a corporate hallway is just another unpoliced environment. The emotional regulation software written to survive schoolyard bullies and neglect applies perfectly to professional life. Sociopathic bosses and impossible deadlines trigger the same stoic defense mechanisms developed in childhood. The result is an arsenal of survival skills: diplomacy, misdirection, and dark humor. If a path doesn't exist, they have the tenacity to make one. They generally refuse to frame themselves as victims of their trauma. Instead, they identify as survivors who learn to put the fun in dysfunction. In a world that feels increasingly out of control, this cynical, do-it-yourself ethos stands as a study in human endurance. They took the absolute minimum and built armor.